This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
This table is really tilted.
Excuse me? Am I gonna get a chance to speak?
Maybe I should take that back.
Denied. Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Take a giant step for mankind.
Welcome to the Tilted Table with your hosts, Sean and Joe.
Folks, welcome to episode 6 of the Tilted Table. I am Sean Landon Clark, your co-pilot.
And I'm Joey Joe, a.k.a. the Fracky Mac.
Oh, baby, we're back. Mm-hmm. You know what? 6 episodes. This is, starting to turn into a thing.
I'm excited, man.
Yeah.
I enjoy riding this magic carpet ride with you.
Yeah, this is great stuff.
Well, I'm really excited about our topic for today. I think this is a great idea, and it's going to spark some really fun things that both of us have to say.
For sure, yeah. We're going to be discussing iconic movies that we haven't seen. And not necessarily a movie that both Joe and I haven't seen, one or the other. It's just any movie that is considered kind of iconic that maybe one or both of us have not seen. So the way that we did this, without giving it away, because we want this to be as organic as possible, is we just made a list of classic films, right? So we sat down and said just classic films, doesn't matter the time period, doesn't matter the genre, and then listed them out. And we're going to take a look at the list and then pick films saying, like, I have not seen this movie. And it doesn't have to be on the list, obviously, but we'll start with Joe. From that list, or from, your own brain, what is an iconic film that you have never seen?
Super easy, because I get heckled about it on a regular basis. I have never seen any of the Godfather movies. And people are like, how is that possible? Are you avoiding those movies? I'm like, no, okay. It's never come up, and I'm a finisher. Uh-huh. So if I sit down and I watch one, I'm going to pretty much just binge all of them.
Okay.
And in those movies, I know there is some high artistic value, but they're long, right? It's a commitment.
I know what you're saying, though, the commitment to it. But here's the good news. Don't watch Godfather 3. No one should watch Godfather 3. You only need to see the first 2. That's about as far as it'll go. I've seen all 3 of the Godfathers. So, yes, it is kind of a commitment for sure. I guess you should kind of have to watch 3 because it finishes the story, although it's not particularly good. So I guess you can get away with just watching the first 2. I think a lot of people haven't seen movies like The Godfathers just because they may not be into the mafia. Mm-hmm. I'm Italian, so I grew up around a lot of this type of stuff. And the sort of the myth of the Italian gangster organized crime, the mafia, the mob. So, yeah, I saw these films. Have you ever seen Goodfellas? That's another.
No.
You've never seen. Okay.
I know exactly what it is, and I know it's in the same genre as Heat and all of that kind of stuff. But no, I'm familiar with some of the quotes. I'm familiar with like the there's a meme.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them.
Yeah. So
classic
I
scenes.
feel like I've seen it, but no, I have not seen Goodfellas either.
Okay, so I think in the pantheon of gangster films, I think Goodfellas is considered more iconic than The Godfather. I think The Godfather is considered kind of the father of these movies. But as far as being the best, I think Goodfellas often is tagged as being the best gangster film. And even if you go on YouTube, there's a bunch of ex-mobsters that talk about mobster movies and how accurate they are. And almost universally, they all say the same thing, that Goodfellas is by far not only the most accurate, they think it's the best one.
Got it. All right. I'll put that on my to-do list.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
So what about you? I know there's a couple more on this list that as we wrote it down, I'm like, wow, how is it possible that I haven't seen these?
Yeah, there's a couple on that list. I was just like, okay, I haven't seen this film. I'm gonna go with one that I think when I tell people I've never seen this movie, they look at me like I'm absolutely out of my mind, and that's Forrest Gump. I've never seen.
How in the world is this possible?
I've never seen Forrest Gump.
Dude, it's it's like a piece of Americana.
I know, and it's so bad with people pressuring me about this film that I've actually thought about watching it a number of times, even though I don't really have an interest, and I think I have a specific reason why. Just because
I'm in shock right now. This is
I know
that's
amazing. I knew I was going
amazing.
to start with that one. I was going to get all the heat for that. I've thought about watching it just because I get tired of people looking at me like, it's one thing, like you said, The Godfather. Now I can kind of get that a little bit, especially if you're not into, gangster films. It would almost be like, there's certain horror movies that, like, oh, I've never seen Friday the 13th type thing, right? But if you're not into slasher films, you may not be drawn to that. Mm-hmm. But there's like really no specific thing about Forrest Gump that should push somebody away and say like, well, I'm not into this kind of film. I'm not into that kind of film or this kind of subject matter. I don't see that at all with Forrest Gump.
No, not at all.
So there's like, why haven't you watched Forrest Gump?
That's one of those that you'll see on Stars or Showtime or what are some of the other movie channels that are on regular television, not even cable. It's like always on.
Right. The whole thing with Forrest Gump, it was not intentional. As a matter of fact, I remember when it first came out, and I saw the trailers for it, and they did all that morphing of him with, like, I think Richard Nixon and that kind of thing. I actually thought that was pretty cool. I mean, that was pretty groundbreaking, I think, for the time to be able to do things like that. Yeah, I was interested in it. And then I saw the scene with, life is like a box of chocolates.
Yep.
And I thought that everybody was just in love with, I know that's kind of an iconic scene. I find it to be stupid. Like, I don't want to watch this guy for, I don't know how long it is. I'm assuming at least 90 minutes, right?
It's a long movie.
Yeah. I don't really, that turned me off. Tom Hanks and that character and that stupid box of chocolate thing was just like, I'm not going to say like Dumb and Dumber. Well, that's another classic film. Obviously, it's not a comedy. And I understand it's a very well-written film. I understand the book that it's based on is a great book. Then the next thing I saw, the Bubba Gump, like when they're like cleaning the floor. I don't know where I saw that. I'm sure it was just flipping through the channels. And it's just like, isn't he like talking about the different types of shrimp or something? There's bat shrimp. There's I saw that scene. And again, I thought, I was like, what is this? This just seems stupid to me. Then I did see the scene with Lieutenant Dan on the I think they're on a boat.
Yep, on the boat.
Yeah, and he doesn't have any legs, and I thought Forrest Gump came across as, it just seems stupid to me. I understand, and I'm saying this knowing it's not a stupid film, and it's this, there's a piece of Americana. Then I did see with the one scene where he's running. He's got the
Run, Forrest!
Right, and all this stuff out of context probably isn't the best way to judge a film. Because, when I've told people I've never seen it, your reaction, that's every reaction. I've never had one person ever say to me, oh, yeah, I saw Forrest Gump. That's okay. Right? Like, and, just excuse me, like, I wouldn't waste your time. Right. Everyone seems to really love that film. So I feel like I'm less of a person for not for not seeing it.
Well, what's another on our list? I think that it was a lot of fun, the fact that we haven't talked about this and we just got to scribble some things down. Well, one that stuck with me forever and ever since I was a kid, I didn't see it. I saw a commercial for it, was Jaws. And to this day, even if I'm in a freshwater lake that clearly doesn't have sharks in it, as soon as I go underwater and it's all murky, in the back of my brain, I just hear this dun. And like, I race as fast as I can through the water to get back in the boat. So I never watched Jaws just because of literally that one scene and that tone difference in the music.
Right.
And I was like, I'm out.
Wow. Okay. You've never seen Jaws. Okay.
And there's more than one, right?
Yeah. I think they went to like 4, and I heard it gets really bad. My experience with Jaws is, I think the first Jaws I saw was the one in 3D, when there was that, like, Friday the 13th came out with part 3 in 3D. There was a Jaws in 3D. 3D was getting its legs back up. It was the third Jaws, I think it was in 3D. I was probably about 8 or 9 years old. I did see Jaws, the first Jaws, probably a couple of years later, maybe when I was 12 or 13. So this would have been, many years after it was already out. It's not bad. I'm not really into sharks as a thing. So it's like movies, same with like haunted houses. I always found the haunted house trope to be boring to me. Like, I'm not wanting to see a movie about it. I don't care how good the movie is. If it deals with a haunted house, I find it boring. Sharks as an enemy or a predator, this just seems boring to me, because it's like, I know, I get it. Sharks are popular, like with Shark Week. I know people like them, and it's, people do get attacked by them. And so there's this part of humans that have this interaction with sharks. I've always found movies about, this sort of killer shark, and there's been a couple of them. I don't know why they're so popular. It just seems real simple. just stay out of the water and they can't hurt you.
True.
So the first film, I do remember it being pretty good, but again, I'm not into it. So I don't recall walking away from it going like, wow, really, really good film, or I was, scared or blown away by anything. I thought it was pretty good, like a summer film. And that's kind of what I got from it. But people treat it like it's, an absolute classic.
Well, yeah, when we talked about films that are iconic and you can just say the title and everybody will say, oh,
Yeah.
I've seen that.
Yeah, and this is the same with the right?
All it is, all you have to do is just those two notes and
Yeah.
people know exactly what
Right.
it is.
It's just the same with the Friday the 13th, like that, whatever that is.
Didn't see those either.
You never studied the Friday the 13th?
I'm not a horror guy, man. So one of the ones I don't even know that we put on or wrote down, but is a hard pass. I don't even care if the lights are on.
Okay.
Exorcist.
The Exorcist.
Nope.
Okay, so you've never seen it.
Nope.
Okay,
Not gonna.
I've never seen it either. Now, I've seen parts of it and scenes from it, and I know what it's about. I've never seen The Exorcist. I think partly is, one, it's an older film. Again, it falls into that Jaws category where by the time I was probably even old enough where my parents would even be remotely okay with me watching something like that, it was already 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 years old. Mm-hmm. There was new movies. I'd rather go see, let's say, a Nightmare on Elm Street. I don't want to see some old-ass 70s film about some girl that's possessed. Mm-hmm. How scary could it be? It's the 1970s.
Right.
I mean, we're in the 80s, baby. This is where we're breaking new ground. Right?
Well, now in 2024, dude, I still won't touch that with a 10-foot pole.
Is it just because you don't like scary films, or
I'm
is
not
something particular about that film? The
no,
subject matter is pretty crazy.
It is. I'm just it's scary movies in general, like any horror movies, which is interesting because my brother is a huge film person, and by huge, he's his hobby, not his day job, but he's semi-professional. He's a sound engineer on Sundance Film Festivals and does a lot of horror movies. Wow. So he has his own IMDb and everything. So he's serious about it.
Wow. Okay,
and
cool.
He is, I don't know if there's a horror movie that he hasn't seen.
Okay.
Yeah, and that is literally, you can turn it on television and you'll watch me jump out of the couch and run out the door. not handling it. Well, speaking of diving out the door, I've never seen any of the Die Hard movies.
What?
Right?
What?
And I don't understand when people
Okay, so hold up. Now we're talking about Americana. You've never seen...
None of them.
You've never seen the first... Oh my God, seriously?
For reals, man. For reals.
I can tell you this right now, that Die Hard, it's a great action film, and that's fine. But Alan Rickman, the main bad guy, Hans Gruber, that's the name of the character, has to be the greatest villain in any movie. I would put that up against anybody. When you talk about these kinds of movies where there's a bad guy against a good guy or whatever you want to call it, he's hands down the greatest movie villain. And if anybody wanted to challenge me on that, I would totally take that challenge. And I think you would lose. I don't think you could pick. And I mean, first of all, the movie's great. And it is a classic 80s action film. Bruce Willis is absolutely amazing in it. He's funny. He plays the part really, really well. He's a flawed hero where the good guy isn't, the most well-adjusted person, right? Mm-hmm. And so, but the bad guy, Hans Gruber, Alan Rickman, he kills this role. He does such a great job. There are parts in that movie where you'll start to, I think, kind of root for Hans Gruber. And you see what he's doing and how he runs his crew and the moves that he makes, why they're doing what they're doing. How they manipulate the police and the FBI when things start to go get crazy for them. It's really, really good. Yeah, I think Die Hard's a must-see. Okay. Yeah. Now, the second one and the third one and the fourth one, to me, they're just action films. I saw the second one, and the second one I thought was okay, but this is really the first one. And you watch the first one, and that's it. You can stop after the first Die Hard.
Fair enough.
Wow.
I like the look on your face right when I said, yeah, I haven't seen Die Hard. It's like your pupils dilated and
right. I think at the end of this, we're going to have to say like, well, look, you're going to have to watch a film and I'm going to have to watch a film I haven't seen. And obviously I'm going to have to watch Forrest Gump. And then you're probably going to have to watch Die Hard. Let's see, another movie on this list that I have never seen. Let me see this thing real quick. I've never seen Jurassic Park. I've never seen any of the Jurassic Parks.
Same.
You've never seen them?
I have never seen them.
Why?
Growing up, my family was like super conservative. So it was like, if it was PG-13 or R,
Okay.
like you couldn't see it. And so when it came out and it was the rage, like we weren't allowed to watch it.
Mm-hmm.
And then as just time went on, I mean, I don't have anything against dinosaur movies, but it's like, there's a zillion other things to watch. And then as more time passes, there's no reason to go back to watch Jurassic Park.
Okay.
Or Jurassic World or whatever it is. So it's funny, a couple years ago we went down to oh man, just pulling a blank. Not Disneyland. What's the other theme park down in Los Angeles?
Magic Mountain.
No. The other one.
California Adventure. That's not even open anymore, is it? Oh, is it Universal Studios?
Yeah, Universal Studios.
Universal Studios.
So Universal Studios, and we were with some friends, and we went on the Jurassic Park ride, and they're like, "Oh, do you remember that one part? Oh, dude, look at that dinosaur! It's out of that one movie. Do you remember the part where they were?" And like, I have no idea what you guys are talking about. Like, I'm just gonna enjoy the ride for being a ride, and there being dinosaurs around. I've no context.
Right. I remember when Jurassic Park first came out, and I'm assuming, and this is probably the same with Jaws, because wasn't Jaws Steven Spielberg?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it wasn't Jurassic Park Steven Spielberg too?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so maybe it's a Steven Spielberg thing. Like these movies get pumped real big, right? I remember when it first came out, and everybody was talking about this film, and I knew the concept, that they were able to clone dinosaurs and then reopen like a dinosaur park. And of course, when you do that and you put these creatures that have been extinct back onto the planet, it creates a problem, right? There's a reason why they're extinct, right? Mm-hmm. That's the whole story, right? So, not interested in dinosaurs. I never have been. So this goes back to like Jaws. Like it would be hard pressed to get me to go even watch, something like a Jaws, just because I'm not interested in sharks, right? Mm-hmm. The same with Jurassic Park. I'm like, dinosaurs. I don't really know if I care that much about it. But to say that I did not see the film, I think it's a little bit of a lie, because I did go to see it in a drive-in movie theater. I went with a girl, and I think we watched about the first 15, 20 minutes. And by then we're fucking around in the car. And,
you had more important things to do.
Yeah, so it was on in the background while I'm, messing around with this girl. So I do have, some memories of specific scenes, and yeah, I couldn't care less. Matter of fact, there's a lot of movies I have not watched that I would sit down and watch long before Jurassic Park. And in those movies that I'm sitting down to watch before Jurassic Park, I don't have a ton of interest in seeing. So it would be near the bottom.
Well, you got Forrest Gump on the list now.
Yeah. Well, that's obviously at the top of the list.
Ooh, another one I haven't seen, The Shining. I think that falls like as a squarely into the quasi horror genre.
Yeah, it's a horror film. I've never seen it either, but I've seen enough of it, and I've read the book. But again, I said earlier, I don't like haunted house. That's not like a trope that I'm very interested in. Mm-hmm. So The Shining never drew me in. And I think by the time I was even old enough to see these kinds of films, that movie would have been labeled to me in the back of my head as being old 70s horror movie. Haunted house, that's not scary. I'll tell you what's scary. Fucking Freddy Krueger. That's scary. That was what my 13, 14-year-old brain is thinking in the middle of the iconic height of those 80s horror films. If you're not invading my dreams and trying to, slash me up. Right, how scary is that? Yeah, it's considered a classic. I mean, Jack Nicholson and gets just applauded for that role left and right. I've never seen it.
Still clips pop up all the time, whether it's in YouTube or Instagram or people, is a main point of reference. And I feel like I've watched it, but.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please?
Leave a like on the video. I know you're enjoying this. Can you shut up?
The internet's answer to a question that was never asked. The Tilted Table with Sean and Joe.
Related to a subject matter I'm not that interested in, I just won't do it. It's the same with like vampires and werewolves. When Interview with a Vampire came out. Mm-hmm. Anything doing with vampires goes below Jurassic Park.
Okay. What about Underworld?
I don't know what that is.
Oh, Man, that is such a great action movie. Well, it's a action movie series.
Is it about vampires?
Like Kate Beckinsale, Vampires and Werewolves. And I'm not into that stuff, but
I mean, I should. I'm being.
It's a good movie.
I'm openly being ignorant here. I'm telling you, I'm being ignorant because I thought. Well, I always thought zombies were a waste of time too, and people were like, "Ooh, have you seen The Walking Dead?" When that was in its first 2 or 3 seasons, and I'm like, zombies, Like it didn't. I'm not interested in zombies. I think they're stupid, right? I think Michael Jackson's Thriller just ruined it for me. Like I'm not that interested in zombies. But then when I saw The Walking Dead, I'm like, okay, so there's a modern kind of take about what a world, let's say a zombie apocalypse. So when you're saying Underworld, this is something I should look into, especially if you're saying like, I'm not into that, but I'm actually into this. They do something with it that.
It's basically the Matrix with vampires and werewolves.
See, that makes me think of like Alien versus Predator. Like Hollywood just gets in a room going like, "Hey guys, I got an idea. Matrix, super popular, right? Twilight, super popular, right? How about we combine the two?" Like that's what they do in Hollywood.
I wouldn't put it past them to do something like that. And that's a pretty fair synopsis. But oh my god, yeah, I've actually rewatched all the Underworld movies.
What is it on? Like, what's the streaming service it's on? Or
I'll have to look it up and get back to you. I still own them on DVDs. Like, that's how old it's been.
I mean, there's a bunch of stuff I know that's out there that I want to see. I stumbled across a video on YouTube, and maybe it's been a short, even one of those reels, and it was a guy saying, like, 5 shows that are on right now that you have to see. And so it's just like, number 1 is this show, right? All of them seemed really, really interesting. But one that he pointed out was a show called From.
Never heard of it.
I'd never heard it. I have known nothing about this, but I looked it up, and it's I think on season 3. So either it's a hidden gem, or it's not that good, or any show. It may be good the first season or 2, but whatever concept that they're working with, it gets old after a while. They don't know where to go with it. So the basic idea in a very short clip that I saw was essentially this family drives into this small town off the beaten path. I guess maybe they're on vacation or something. And they get stuck in the town, like they can't get out of the town. Like I don't know if it's they can't. There's no way out of it. Like there's no roads leading out. But all the people that live in this town apparently got trapped in the town as well.
That's bizarre.
So I don't know where it goes. Stuff like that. You're gonna find out what I like. Like there's stuff like that. I'm like, okay, that seems kind of like interesting.
I would sit down and watch that.
So, I mean, if there's a genre that I lean towards more than anything, it's always some sort of like psychological thriller type stuff. It can go into a little bit of the action arena. I'm cool with that. But I'm not a big fan of just out and out action films. There has to be some sort of psychological element to it. I do like movies that have those kinds of weird concepts and like what's going on. I don't know what's happening. But I read a lot of books, and a lot of books have that kind of thing where it's like you're literally trying to solve a riddle as you're reading. Like, what the hell is going on? And if it's too easy and predictable, then I often kind of turn away from it a little bit. Like, okay.
Did you like Inception?
You know what? There's another iconic film that I tried to watch, and I made it about, I think, 35 minutes into it. But I was either I may have been with my girlfriend at the time. Unlike the Jurassic Park thing, it wasn't that, we're fucking around or, screwing around. I think we just distracted each other with whatever we were talking about. It wasn't like we weren't paying attention to the movie, but there were parts where I think that, we got up to go to the kitchen real quick, and we both kind of like, what the hell's going on? It seems like the kind of film that you really have to pay attention to.
Yes.
Yeah, so
that's great. I enjoyed that.
So we said, okay, well, let's just cut it off, and we'll start it again tomorrow, and we'll really pay attention to it. And we just never got back to it.
Okay. We'll put that on your list.
No, you put that on my list. Yeah, it's supposed to be a great film, and I like from watching it. I remember liking it. I remember just getting lost. Like, what the hell are you doing? Like, why is this happening right now?
One of the ones I think is the obvious is when people are like, I haven't seen Star Wars. I'm like, how do you avoid seeing Star Wars?
Wait, you've seen Star Wars,
correct?
Oh,
of course. Yeah. I'm just saying I have talked to a handful of people who've never seen any of the Star Wars movies. And I think that's like on your resume under skills and accomplishments, you should list that as successfully avoided seeing Star Wars over the last 40 years.
I met, her name was Jolene. I can't remember her last name. Anyways, cute girl. This is, I was living in the Bay Area, so I met her here. And then I moved to San Francisco, and she eventually moved to San Francisco as well. So I tracked her down. I was able to find her. And I went over to her place. We must have hung out for 2 hours. I can't remember one damn thing about our conversation that we had, but for some reason, Star Wars was brought up. And she said she had never, ever seen any of the Star Wars. And I remember specifically telling her, like, that's insane. How could you have not seen Star Wars?
It's impossible.
Right? And she's like, well, I'm just not interested. The same thing I'm saying about half these damn movies, right? Well, it's just not anything that interests me, right? You know. And I told her, I said, we should go see it. And I think at this point, I was trying to ask her out on a date. So I said, let's go see Star Wars. And she's like, I'm not interested. And I said, what, in me or Star Wars? And she's like, no, I don't want to see Star Wars. And I said, I wouldn't say this to you if I wasn't 100% positive that if you watch this film, you'll enjoy it. You're not going to walk out of there going like, whoa, this is a stupid film. No one's ever said that about Star Wars.
No,
And she's just like, nope, she didn't want to see it. I remember thinking it was kind of strange, but in hindsight, I completely respect her because there's, again, people try to force me to watch movies that I'm incapable of watching because I have zero interest in. So I understand her point of view.
Well, some of the other ones that people might punt on would be, you know, if there's any action movies or super violent movies like Predator, Terminator, you know, people that are interested in boxing, you know, any movies in the Rocky series. You know, those I can kind of understand. But then there's like the basic ones like Star Wars. One of the other movies that when we were looking at iconic films, the movie 300. Cookie and I went to the theater to watch 300 when it came out, and it's the only movie that I've ever watched that I came out of the theater wanting to fight someone.
I'll tell you what my experience with 300 is. 300 minus 300, 0. I don't know what it's about. I've never seen it. Isn't it so?
What in the... Holy mackerel.
I know absolutely zero. I shouldn't say that because I know it's a movie that is a
I don't
time
even
period
know
like
what
the Spartans
to say
or
here.
the Romans or something.
Wow.
Is it the same time period as like Gladiator?
Basically.
Yeah, okay,
basically.
So at least I know that much.
Wow.
Is it about Sparta?
It's about the Spartans.
Yeah, the Spartans. Okay, so okay,
it's a little bit it's pre-Rome, but like, you know,
sure.
basically same.
So I know that much about it. I've never seen it.
Man, that is one of my top 10 list of all time.
See, and this is the thing is that like I'm not against that type of movie in that time period. I loved Gladiator. So I have every reason to watch 300. Man. And I've never seen it.
I'd do that tonight. I do that. Shoot.
Does that go above Forrest Gump?
Last weekend we watched this for sure.
Okay.
100%. Last weekend we watched the second 300 movie, which is like in the same time period as the first one, but it's just like a different theater of the battle. Cookie and I watched it again, and that had to be my 15th time watching that movie.
God damn.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, there's no reason for me to have not seen that film. I just never watched it. What about I'm looking at this list, and I think I know the answer to this. Have you ever seen E.T., the Extraterrestrial?
Of course.
Who hasn't seen that?
That was, I mean, well, you think of it when we were growing up, and this is, you know, late 70s, early 80s, like movies were not like it was today, right? There would be like 4 movies that would be out in the theaters for like 6-8 months at a time.
Yes.
And you couldn't miss things. It's not like, oh, I didn't go to the theater this week, I totally missed it.
You're right. So yeah, theaters would be running maybe more than 4. I'm going to say that at any given time there was probably like 5 like kind of big deal films that I'm going to call them big budget, and then there were a handful of kind of smaller, maybe slightly lower budget films. But unless you lived in like a San Francisco, or New York, or LA, those movies may not be playing in your town. And they weren't being played anywhere where we lived, right? So yeah, you'd have like, you know, your E.T. when that came out, it was massive. It would be nearly impossible for any child, a child of that era, to not have seen that film because every kid wanted to see it. And yeah, the movies would sit in theaters for...
Man, I'm big movies like that. Big months.
But I know that they would cycle them because when I saw Star Wars, the first one, which I think came out in 77? I was only 3 years old. They weren't going to take me to a Star Wars film. I saw it on the re-release. So when Empire Strikes Back was coming out, they re-released Star Wars in the theaters again. So I remember they cycled a lot of them. So you would have something like, I remember they did this with Poltergeist. So Poltergeist came out. It was a surprise hit, massive hit. People were freaked out. and it ran its course the next year when Halloween came around. Put that sucker back in theaters. So yeah, movies lasted much longer in the theaters. And then when people did have like VCRs, it took a long time for the movie to come out for home viewing. And it was expensive to buy, and they're like $60-$70 to buy a movie. And that was what, like 1986, 87.
Yeah.
When $60 was still $60.
Yes. You know, it's funny, earlier today as I was rooting through that plastic that I mentioned that had all the stickers in it, I came across my original Blockbuster card.
Wow.
I miss Blockbuster.
I don't know what happened to my Blockbuster card. It wasn't too long ago that I saw it. Like, so I must have been going through some old stuff. Yeah. Yeah, long before streaming. Yeah, you go down to the video store and you rent a movie. And half the time you didn't know what the movie was. You just see all these boxes with all this cover art, and, you just take a gamble on it. Right? Most of the movies that I'd get were things I'd never even heard of. Like, what is this? It might have like an actor I recognize. Like, oh, that's I like that.
But I think that was part of the charm of that period of time, is going to Blockbuster or a movie store, or whatever, and not knowing or having a specific game plan all the time.
Sure.
And then you uncovered some of these gems just from, oh, that looks cool, or the way that the box was, or everything else was sold out, and so you settled for something that you actually ended up enjoying.
Right.
Yeah, I loved Blockbuster.
Is there any films that you ever rented from a Blockbuster, or maybe went to a movie theater and didn't think much about what you were about to see, and then walked out saying, "Oh my God, that's the greatest thing I've ever seen"?
I would say the only movie that I went to that I didn't know anything about it, and I wanted to sue to get those hours of my life back.
Oh, so you're going the opposite direction.
Yeah, I'm going the opposite direction.
Okay.
Someone gave me tickets for a surprise viewing of John Travolta's movie. I want to say was it?
Can I guess? Was it Midnight Cowboy?
No, it was the Planet Earth one.
Oh, the one at the Scientology. Battlefield Earth.
Battlefield Earth.
Oh,
holy mackerel, man. I just remember walking down the stairs when the credits rolled, and I was like, I need that 2 hours back. That was a flipping waste.
Well, it's a Scientology movie, and it's based on one of L. Ron Hubbard's books. And unless I'm not criticizing Scientology, but it's a movie based on a religious text. If you consider,
I think that's a reach.
When we put this podcast together, we were really adamant about, like, let's not get into politics or religion or anything too crazy. Like, some people consider it a religion. Me personally, I don't really consider it a religion, but nonetheless, look, it's based on some quote unquote religious text, and it was made for that specific purpose. How good could it be if it's basically a commercial for Scientology? Isn't that really what this is about?
But it did, we could go down that long dark rabbit trail, but suffice to say, I went to the movie not knowing anything about it. I was like, oh, John Travolta, that sounds pretty cool.
Oh, you were walking into it thinking this is like a legit sci-fi film.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
What about you? Is there a movie that you didn't know anything about? You said there's two.
Well, there's two that I knew nothing about. One becoming one of my all-time favorite films. It might be my favorite film of all time. That was based on a recommendation. Somebody was talking about this movie and trying to be part of the conversation. I'm like, well, what is the movie about? And the first thing, my friend Rob Kuzny, was a reporter friend of mine. He was my roommate up in San Francisco. He's like, well, it's really can't explain the film. I don't know how to explain. And I'm like, what do you mean you can't explain it? A movie has a plot. It has something going on. What is it about? And he's like, I really can't explain it, right? So that was one film that I ended up watching and falling in love with. That was The Big Lebowski. So, okay. And when I saw The Big Lebowski for the first time, I remember being angry that there's a possibility that I could die and had never seen this movie. And the second thing is, how many other movies are out there that are like this, that would absolutely blow my mind, that I don't know anything about? And unless someone like, friend says, you have to watch this, I'm never going to see this film, right? So the other one was Office Space.
Oh, that is a classic.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about it. I'd seen it in a theater, and it was not. I don't think it was the initial release, It was a couple years after. There was a theater that was near my apartment in Oakland called the Broadway Theater. And one of the movies was Office Space. So I had never seen Office Space. So anyways, Office Space comes on. I have no expectations. And at the time I was working as a journalist for the Oakland Tribune, and I was struggling with my job. I wasn't paid very well. Newspapers, this is 2002-ish. You know, everything's falling apart for newspapers, and it just wasn't a good environment to work in. Not only was it a toxic environment to work in, it was a failing business model, right? So it's like, in 20 years, you think I'm going to be working at a newspaper? So I was getting sort of to the point where I'm like, I got to figure out something. So that movie, and I don't want to get into a whole Office Space thing. I think it's a great film. If someone has never seen it, I think it's a movie that can be almost universally related to, because everybody's had a job that they didn't like. The movie's definitely got a whole thing about a kind of a crisis about, like, is this what we're meant to do? To go to these small little cubicles and look at screens and do all this sort of menial work. And they do, I think, a good job of kind of like the redundancy of the work world, the inefficiency, the meaninglessness around a lot of the things that you do.
TPS reports.
Yeah, TPS reports and whatnot. So I was just like, when I was done with that movie, I was like, oh shit. I was just like, and I went home and I was living with Rob, the guy that turned me on to Big Lebowski. And I'm just like, dude, I just saw, Office Space. And he's like, oh yeah, it's a great film. I was like, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm gonna Peter Gibbons this job. I'm gonna go find something meaningful to do. And then I found it.
Hey,
so there you go.
It always works out.
Yeah. So
well, my quick Office Space thing is, I rented it this had to be the year 2000. I rented it at Blockbuster. I was just finishing college. And I watched, and I never had a real job before. I'd like tutoring in the math center, little part-time jobs or whatnot, but I never had a job. And I remember watching it, and I thought, well, this is kind of funny. Like, there's good parts, but I had no context. And then when I started my first real job, and a year later, and then I rewatched the movie, I had a completely new appreciation for every character, the struggles, the red stapler. I mean, you name it.
Yeah.
It hit in a whole different way.
It's a particularly well-written film, and the characters are well-written, and everybody's represented in the movie. I think in the annoying world of bureaucracy and work, all characters represented well. Yeah.
And what's also funny, too, is you see Jennifer Aniston pop up in the movie, and then you're like, wait a second. She hasn't aged.
Yeah, Jennifer Aniston it's kind of a small role. It's one thing I love about Jennifer Aniston is I think that she doesn't take herself too seriously. So she took a role that was definitely, probably considering the time, Friends was still a massive big hit. She probably could have got a starring role in a big film if she wanted one. Somebody would have given her a vehicle, right? So she takes a role in this kind of low budget movie about a guy who hates his job. So yeah, I've always appreciated that about her. But yeah, there's so much great stuff about Office Space.
Well, it's such a fun question. What iconic movies haven't you seen? And I think we were both surprised at each other's respective answers. Probably me with The Godfather, and you and Forrest Gump. That's still, I can't believe. Or 300. That really blows me away.
I think you having seen Die Hard is absolutely just blows me away. I mean, especially considering your age, you were right in that wheelhouse. So yeah, that's shocking to me. Especially since I think it's played on TV almost every Christmas.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a big debate whether it's a Christmas movie or not. So yeah, I think it's interesting, and I think it shows a lot about just the amount of things that are out there that are considered like great pieces of work, artistic pieces of work that people have not seen for whatever reason.
I have an important announcement for you, so stay tuned.
Yo, that's some next level shit, bruh.
So you got me. Big deal.
The internet's answer to a question no one asked. The Tilted Table with Sean and Joe.
Folks, all right, thank you so much for joining us on the Tilted Table. I am Sean Landon Clark.
And I am Joey Joe, a.k.a. the Fracky Mac. It's always a highlight, man.
Yeah, it's super, super fun. And let's take it to episode 7.
I'm digging it.
Yeah, that's where we're going to go next.
Yeah. Well, on the count of 3. Peace.
Peace.